YouTube, welcome back. Whenever I've been playing a game for more than just a couple days here on twitch.tv, I like putting a video on YouTube as well, just so that you know what's going on and that hopefully you can enjoy this game as well if you're not already playing it. This is a game that is not an action RPG, even though the vast majority of the games that I play are action RPGs. This is more along the lines of Storybook Brawl, or perhaps a deck builder, or an auto battler, or a roguelike game, something along those lines. If you played Storybook Brawl back in the day, a couple of years ago, you will know exactly what this game is, because there are a ton of similarities between this game and that game. That game no longer has live servers. It has a storied past to it that you can read all about. But this is a number of passionate individuals who are trying to put together a game that captures the essence of Storybook Brawl and adds some new features to it. One thing that I look out for when I see that there's like a spiritual successor to something is this literally a clone? Would I have liked the original game, or is this game better or different than anyway? And there's a couple differences that I'm going to talk about as soon as we get into game. I'm going to do an asynchronous game, not in real time. And we're going to talk through some of the decisions. We're going to talk through what the board looks like and those sorts of things so that you can know what's going on as well. This game is free. It's got a shop. You can do some microtransaction stuff. There's some codes that you can redeem. These crystals up here, they use to unlock heroes, but I'll show you what that screen looks like in a moment. I personally feel no particular reason to spend money on this game, but the game is great. So it sounds like they'd like to do a Kickstarter in the future. They'd like to have people design cards or maybe have their pictures in the game or something. So it looks like they're thinking about more ways to raise money for the game, which is great because the game's very, very fun. I've been playing it for about 2 weeks at this point. Without chatting too much about that, there is a tutorial. It is quite good. I've never played a game like this before. I never played Storybook Brawl. I went through the tutorial. I did the guided, the 1, 2, 3 here, and I felt like I knew what was going on. So if you're a brand new player like I was, I would recommend the tutorial to you. Let's go into this. You'll know the first big difference between this and Storybook Brawl is that there is an asynchronous play mode. They are working on making the asynchronous play as competitive and as good in terms of matchmaking as the real time is. The real time is harder currently. Hopefully they will make the asynchronous harder as well. I currently play asynchronous because, oh my God, it's so much faster to play asynchronous than it is to play synchronous. And sometimes you don't have an hour to sit down and not address the screaming baby upstairs. Sometimes. Let's click play and I will show you what's going on here. The first screen you're going to see is the character selection screen. I'm going to hide my picture for just a moment so you see exactly what's going on. We have 4 characters here. When you unlock a hero, so to speak, using your crystal boys, little crystal currency up here, what it means is if that character shows up on the right side in these right 2 spots, you can play it. There are a whole bunch of heroes. They randomly populate these 4 spaces. If you unlock something, it just means that if they show up over here, then you can click on them. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and click on somebody. We've got some underlined stats here. Things that are underlined can be manipulated. They can be doubled. They can be increased in strength. And they can change over time. So when things are underlined, you can pay attention to those because they might numerically change. You'll see that the flow of this game, we have like some very basic stuff that happens. Just having big numbers at the beginning is quite good. And then as the game progresses, you'll notice that building into synergies and building into an archetype tends to be stronger than just having a big number. So let's click on somebody here. I'm gonna click on Sinbad the Adventurer, and immediately you'll see that there are a couple numbers here. And this brings us to another important difference between Storybook Brawl and this game, is that we have this number in the very bottom left corner, and this is hero attack. I'm actually surprised that this didn't exist in Storybook Brawl because it seems so natural to fit into the game, and I really like it. There's even an archetype that supports it. You can totally build around it. So hero attack means I'm just gonna read to you. If your characters are defeated, your hero, your Sinbad, attacks the opponent's remaining characters. Here's my description of this. And this is one of the reasons that my imagination started running wild with this game. Imagine a Pokemon fight where you summon Bulbasaur and I summon Pikachu. and your Bulbasaur knocks out my Pikachu. But then I get to punch your Bulbasaur. And if I knock out your Bulbasaur, it's a tie. Something about that explanation puts the biggest smile on my face, and I think it's hilarious. So anyways, having a big hero attack is kind of like a propensity to tie a game. So something like Joan of Arc or Merlin, you'll see like 0 times 2 is dealing 0 damage twice. These characters will lose in the early games because they won't have the ability to tie. Things like Sinbad, 1 times 2, dealing 1 damage twice. It's pretty easy to tie in the early game, and you can experiment with those things if you like. There's another difference between this game and Storybook Brawl is the mana symbol here. Most heroes start out with 2 mana. Merlin is a spellcaster. He starts out with 3 mana. And your spells do not only cost gold, they also cost mana. So it's a pretty nice self-balancing mechanism for it. If you play like a mage archetype, like a spells matter archetype, you'll get like -1 gold cost of your spells. There's nothing that gives minus mana cost of spells, but there is stuff that gives you additional mana per turn. So maybe you have 7 mana per turn and -1 gold mana cost of your spells. And every time that you re-roll your selection, you'll have like an extra 1 or maybe even 2 spells that show up there. So again, it's cool, it's interesting, it is distinct from Storybook Brawl, and there are archetypes that support it. And in my opinion, it's very, very fun. It's some of my favorite stuff to do in this game. So let's go ahead and click this, click confirm, and we'll load into the game here. I'm going to keep my camera hidden just so you can see exactly what's going on here. So we're playing asynchronously. You'll see that there are some other usernames that appear on the left corner of the or left side of the screen. These are other people. These are their saved boards. If you played something like Backpack Battles in the past, you'll know what like a saved board asynchronous play means. Cool. We have some treasure slots over here. A lot of similarities there. We have the turn counter. Got some bug reporting. Looks great. And then top left corner, we have our gold per turn and our mana per turn. The green line under our reroll tells us how many free rerolls we have remaining. And then right here in the middle, we have our characters that we can purchase for the round. They all cost 2 gold here, and we have 2 gold. And then you'll see our spells. And I want to call out the spells in particular because these 2 things are different than Storybook Brawl. Cost 0 gold, 1 mana, so I cast 2 of them. And this is equipment. Equipment didn't exist in Storybook Brawl, apparently. I didn't play the game, but people tell me that. Equipment goes onto your characters. There's some basic stuff like a short sword. There's some spellcaster stuff. There's some equipment that give abilities, equipment that make them stealth, equipment that does all kinds of stuff. So equipment, again, like everything else I've listed, has a defining archetype. You could play dwarves, for example, and dwarves love to have lots of equipment. Some other stuff that matters is, let's see the text on the cards. We have like one attack, 1 health, 1 attack, 1 health. Let's go play a little around here. I've got a nice talking frog here, and if we can cast a spell on the frog, he's going to turn into something else. So let's go ahead and do that. He costs 2, and then this thing costs 1 mana. Give a character +1/+1. So let's turn into a 4/4 prince by dragging it down here. And he is a 5/5 because we put food on him. And then he says your royals have +1/+1. So he buffs himself because he's a royal. So now he's a 6/6. And having a 6/6 on turn 1 is really good. So we could try to lock and have these same things appear in our shop next turn. Maybe we want to keep Elaine here because Elaine, if we purchase her, she's a 2/1, but she's already getting the 1/1 buff from this. So then we could build all the royals. And there's a royal archetype or a boost archetype, and there's Romeo and Juliet that you could build as well. So maybe that's something that we're interested in. I'm going to click roll here and see what else shows up in our shop. Yeah, this looks fine. Let's just go ahead and hit start fight here. Let's see, is there anything else we want to talk about first? I think we're just about fine there. Let's go ahead and do this. Punch. Man, I got the speed turned up so fast. I'm going to turn down the speed a little bit so you can see a little bit more of what's going on. It doesn't just blitz through every single turn. What else can we do? I don't see any royals here. There's a cat. Man, if you want a simple archetype to wrap your mind around, just buy cats. Cats, summon more cats. You can get the cat queen later on. Ooh, there's so much good stuff. Something that's important to note, we just progressed through the turn counter here. So we start out level 2, which means all the things in our shop cost 2 gold, and they're all like level 2 characters. These are called characters. This guy is called my hero. So this is a 2, and you see this little green counter here. It takes 3 experience to get to the next level. 6 is the top level, and it's always 3 experience. So getting from level 5 to level 6 is 3 experience. When I'm level 3 things will show up in my shop, so 3s and 2s. When I get to level 6, I will see level 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I will see all kinds of junk in my shop. And then, of course, my gold and my mana progress as well. So what are we doing here? Let's make some more decisions. We can hover over my opponent and see what they're doing. Looks like they're playing some kind of goose thing. Goose is a little piece of economy. I can hover over this. It says if you wait for 3 rounds, it sells for 2 gold instead of the normal 1 gold. Normally, everything you sell sells for exactly 1 gold. Goose is a nice exception for that. What can we do here? If I take 1 damage, then I can spend 4 gold instead of 3 gold. I think I'm into that. What if I do this, take a damage? Maybe I could go like, I could buy Dwarfy and a sword. Ooh, it's kind of enticing. I'm just gonna reroll though and see what else we can do. This is not exactly what I wanted, but we can go ahead and buy a Smiling Sprout. This is like a little tree guy, and he gets a nice amount of defense over time. Let's see. Do I want to buy a random fairy or do I want to buy a random sword? I think I'd rather buy the random sword. Let's go ahead and do this. Put the sword on this guy, and then we'll hit start fight. So you'll note there was some back and forth there. When you're fighting, my characters are always going to punch the opponent's characters in the front row. And my characters will only attack their back row once their front row is entirely gone. In a similar way, their characters will attack my front row. There is something called ranged. Ranged means that when my ranged character punches your character, they don't also hurt me. Which of course means that by default, if your character doesn't have ranged, if I punch your character, they both deal damage to each other. So that's one early keyword that you want to know about. Do this. There's a keyword that's kind of seldom. It doesn't show up too often, but there's something called flying. And flying in this game means that my character, no matter where it is, prioritizes their back rank instead of prioritizing their front rank. So there's a lot of positional stuff that goes on. And if you want to see really what the positional stuff is, take a look at the dogs and all the dogs that show up in game. Let's pop open the collection number or the collection tab over here. And we can take a look at some of the things that appear in this game. I like sorting by level. Let's go ahead and view every single thing that exists in this game. It's really convenient having a built-in wiki like this. I like it a whole lot. But things like the Adventuring Husky really highlight one of the other differences between this game and Storybook Brawl is that positioning matters. So there's like this whole dog archetype that really highlights it. And then there's some other things that highlight it in a lesser fashion. But this kind of hits you over the head with the difference. It says, if you haven't been in this position in the past 2 fights, I have +3/+3 food stats for each position I'm away from my position in the last fight. So what the Husky does, ideally, is you put him in like position number 1, and then you put him in position number 7, and then you put him in position number 2, and then you put him in position number 6, and you kind of like every round you do something like this to maximize his stats. And it's really cool. It's kind of a headache, but if you like that kind of thing, he's an excellent mid-game card, and he's really good for tempo, for example. So that's a cool thing to call out there. The other thing that I wanted to mention along with this is the Adventuring Husky has this keyword called food, and food is another of the big differences between this game and Storybook Brawl. Food is a temporary stat that only exists for 1 turn. Of course, like everything else that I've mentioned, there is an archetype around food that you can build around and have like a late game strategy. Hardworking Haymaker tends to be one of the things you really look for on that. This says entrance, so like at the beginning of the fight, all your characters get +5/+3. And then importantly, your characters retain 20% or 40% when you upgrade it of their food stats after a fight. And that really helps you to build up a nice big board in terms of stats. And then of course, there's other synergies that go along with that too. That I think that almost covers it for differences between this game and Storybook Brawl. Let's pull up the last difference that you'll really want to know about. Of course, the next thing we're to talk about is something that has a supporting archetype. There's lots of cool things you can do with it, but it's different. So let's go ahead and call it out. Bluebell here is a little fairy, and she says on entrance, charge 1 star that deals 3 damage after 3 attacks if you have less than 7 stars. If this is hard for you to parse mentally, ignore the last clause, or yeah, ignore the last phrase. If you have less than 7 stars, that does not matter. Ignore that, and then all of a sudden, it's much easier to parse what this thing does. At the beginning of a fight, it's going to charge a delayed damage. It's going to charge a little missile that deals damage. Let's buy this and see what our little missile looks like. Cool. Let's do this. Do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Let's roll a couple times. Sure. We'll lock this. I'm going to lock this because I see a talking frog and he wants me to cast a spell on him, and then I can cast a spell on him right here. So I think I'll do that. Sure. Let's hit start fight. And at the very beginning of the fight, you'll see that on these stars in the middle of the board, there will be a number that charges there. And it'll have a damage number that says 3. And then it'll have a turn counter or an attack counter that gradually counts down from 3 to 0. And then it'll shoot the enemy. So keep an eye out for that right now. And I'll show you what that looks like. Take a look. So if my opponent had had more cards in play or more characters in play, after one more attack, they would have been shot. Let's give that one more attempt. I'll do what I just talked about. I've got 2 gold left. And you know what? If I got 2 gold left, I'm going to buy Elaine over here. She's a ranged character, so she's good at sniping things without getting hit in retaliation. And she's a royal, so she works out with the 2 freed princes that I already have. Yeah, I think this is fine. We can roll once. Is there anything else here? Nah, nothing that I care too much about. Let's hit start fight and keep an eye out. There, he's got more than 1 character in play. Keep an eye out for the star here and watch how it works. 2, 1, pew pew. All right, so you saw the little star shoot out there and deal 3 damage. Now the front lines are all gone. And that very last bolt of purple damage was my hero attack. So that was me punching his Pikachu. And because I knocked out his Pikachu with my fist, we tied the game. Boy, that is such a good description. God, it puts a smile on my face. So those are the biggest differences between this game and Storybook Brawl. I think I'm just going to cut out the video there instead of making this video an hour long. Just a little 18-minute introduction to what is going on in this game. I've been enjoying it way more than I thought I was going to, and I'm going to keep playing it. It's a nice little diversion. It's definitely a change of pace from the normal action RPGs that I play, but it's very enjoyable. So if you like what you see here, you can always watch live at twitch.tv/bearthepig, or you can just look for maybe some other videos that we might post about this game as well, as we wait for a certain other game to come into 1.0. As of this recording, I think... Oh man, wait, it's New Year's Eve. Oh wait, the New Year's in an hour and a half. That's pretty good. I think it's 48 days. It might be 47 days. Don't quote me on that. I think it's 48 days until the launch of Last Epoch 1.0. You and me both, my friends. All right, I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.